Hi, my name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelim McAleer.
Welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop. It is week 65. That is, what is that, Phelim? What is 65?
According to your mathematics, which is,
Which is always a worry.
Always suspect. That is 1 year, 3 months and 1 week since the 2 weeks to flatten the curve lockdown.
But we've huge news here.
Remember, we're going to quash the curve. Remember that. And to stop the health services becoming overwhelmed, we're going to close for 2 weeks. And now it seems to be we're trying to kill the virus, actually. No one must catch the virus now.
Well, we've huge news here, though, because in California this week, we've been freed. Have we not? Did that not happen, Phelim?
We have been freed, Anne. Isn't that amazing?
Somehow. But you know what? It's not the same.
A year after Florida was freed, 6 months after Texas was freed, or a year, this is the last state in the union to be freed.
Crazy, yeah, exactly. But however bad it is in the United States, spare a thought for people in the UK who were promised that everything would open in June, on the 21st, I think, of June, or the 20th of June. Everything would be open. And now Boris Johnson, just on a whim, has decided, no, you know what, we're going to push it back 4 weeks because of the Delta variant. As they say, there'll always be a variant. And the latest now is that they're going to push it back by 4 more weeks after the 21st of June.
So there's no restaurants in the UK. There's no indoor pubs in the UK. There's all these restrictions. There's no Broadway. There's no West End theatres. Nothing. And there's restrictions on gatherings, and you have to wear masks.
Anyway, what else is happening in the show today? Because we've got a lot going on today, actually. We've a lot.
Well, we're going to look at the G7 madness and G7 hypocrisy and G7 virtue signalling. Hunter Biden is moving house, and guess why? No, it had nothing to do with us.
Nothing to do with us.
No,
absolutely not. No, not at all. Yes, so we have news on that, which will be very good.
Where's my bullhorn?
And also, Phelim,
of course, listen, there's a virus out there, the G7, inflation's on the march, lumber costs a fortune, cats are hungry. But we all know, when Hollywood tells us what the world needs right now is
another abortion road movie. Is that right, Phelim?
An abortion road trip movie. And Hollywood Reporter just thinks it's wonderful. Let me tell you something. Don't think that the madness of Venice and the degradation of the homeless is a Californian thing or a Los Angeles thing. It's coming to a city near you. As your cities become more leftist, this is the model going forward because it makes social justice sense. So we'll be talking about that.
And we have an easy peasy recipe involving a microwave and literally 5 minutes of work time, which we'll be bringing you. And I've never done this before, and actually I'm going to do it. I'll make it on the patio later at the end of the program. So we'll be looking forward to that. Yes.
Question: does the easy peasy recipe have any peas in it?
No, but I know you love peas. No, but it's a dessert. It's a dessert.
It's a dessert?
Oh, so now you're happy. You see?
I don't even know what it is, actually. Wait.
I know you don't. I think you don't know what it is. So look, we're going to start though by looking at the G7, the craziness of the G7. So, these are the world's leaders. These are the people that that are supposed to be some kind of role models that you would look up to, that would be sober and sensible and rational and logical and all those kind of things.
Yes.
And I think the best way to summarize what happened at the G7 is with a few images that we want to look at.
Yeah.
That are just, imagine yourself being, somebody. I think I'm borrowing from somebody else, but I think imagine an alien arrives from outer space and says, bring me to your leaders, right? Or whatever. And they go to the G7 summit and they're like looking at these pictures, trying to work out, well, what's the message here? So, it started out with this elaborate elbow dancing thing. You'll see a little bit of this video of the elbow dancing, huge amount of elbow dancing that went on. So there were all these leaders were keeping their social distance, elbowing each other. These people, by the way, all of them have been vaccinated according to themselves, right? So they're all fully vaccinated. They've gone past the 20, whatever it is, the 14 days after the vaccination, but they're at the elbowing stage. They're at the elbowing. They did a whole lot of that. But then it's like, almost immediately afterwards.
We've done that footage. We've done that, and everyone gets the message. And then after a day, so like everyone else, they relaxed.
Yeah, and by the way, relaxed. God, it's like they're getting a bit hot and sweaty with each other. Yeah. It's like they're getting from, what is that? What Americans say about getting from first base or whatever. Yeah. I mean, this is all a bit intimate looking.
Yeah, Mr. Macron and Mr. Biden.
There was a Macron-Biden thing. It's like a kind of a courtship, and it ended up with the most ridiculous image of all, as far as I'm concerned, with this hand holding, which is kind of like.
I know you're not allowed to say it. It's a bit gay, though. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
It's just a bit odd. It's
But he's
almost
French.
like-
I mean, they're all gay, aren't
no,
they?
but it's also, it's a kind of, no, the whole thing is, I have to say, the hand holding to me is gratuitous. It's like, you went from this elbowing thing, right? Which was ludicrous. And by the way, look at Trudeau, by the way. When he did the elbowing, Trudeau was wearing a mask. And some of the other ones were wearing masks at odd times too. It's like, you know, so you imagine the alien, you know, with the perfect brain or whatever, comes down here, a superior form of life, and says, bring me to your leaders. Let me see how your leaders operate. And they're looking and they're thinking, now there's something going on, obviously, where everyone's very careful and they're keeping apart from each other, whatever. You know, but then on top of but then you have the hand holding. You know, I suppose that's the special relationship, is it, Phil?
Yes, obviously very special. And then you got Trudeau there. Look at that picture of Trudeau with the mask and the elbowing. And there's Trudeau standing there in a full conversation with Her Majesty the Queen. I feel sorry for the Queen at these events, like dealing with these.
And the Queen, by the way, she's motoring on there with no mask on and all of that. But anyway,
and she's definitely
there's a number. Lately, I came across, this is gratuitous and just a little. I have a question for you, Philip, and I think I know the answer. What is? Because I've been just looking at, there's just a few images at the beginning of the show, and those of you who are not watching on YouTube, you're missing out a little bit on these pictures. But anyway, this picture I just think definitely needed to be looked at. So Phil, my question to you, fingers on the buzzers.
Yes.
What is the opposite of fat shaming?
Fat shaming. So fat shaming is where you shame someone for being fat. So the opposite of that is, I suppose...
I think I know what it is.
It's
the word affirmation comes into it.
Fat acceptance, isn't that? No, there's a fat acceptance movement.
Is there what's that body?
Body positivity.
Body positivity, right? Now, okay, I'm putting up this image here.
Oh.
Now, the headline, you haven't seen this, Philip,
yes.
but here's the headline that goes with this picture.
Right,
And
I'm very interested in the headline.
So the headline says, yoga teacher 𝙎𝙤𝙣 Stanley believes white supremacy has polluted yoga and it's time to talk about it. Now, and there's a photograph of Yasmin, and Yasmin is an African-American lady, and she is morbidly obese, it would be the correct description, right? Now, and she's a yoga teacher, by the way, but that's kind of the thing that I think is most significant here in a way. But there's loads of things that are significant here. I first saw this on Twitter and I didn't believe it. I thought it was a deep fake. I thought it was somebody was joking. But it's not. It's a real thing, and we checked it out because we are here for you and we do that kind of thing.
Somebody needs to talk about it because the journalist just pretends that this is a perfectly normal image and there's nothing wrong, makes no reference to that image.
Yeah.
You know.
So here, there's a number of things to say here. I mean, the most significant thing, obviously, is the fact that this person, this black woman here in this picture, is morbidly obese. And that, you know, Magda was just making the point earlier, like, you know, the goalposts change all the time. We're old enough to remember, as they say, you know that phrase, I'm old enough to remember. We're old enough to remember when Michelle Obama was in the White House and she talked about the, what was it called?
Obesity crisis.
The obesity crisis, or the obesity epidemic, right?
And everyone had to get out and move.
And by the way, we're not questioning the science actually behind what Michelle Obama was saying, because she was right. Because even before COVID, right? Even before COVID, obesity causes a huge number of health difficulties. So add to that, we've moved forward now. Now we've got COVID, and now we know, by the way, and no one actually is denying that.
Yes.
We now know that one of the worst situations to be in, and that's the fact that the morbidity among the population of obese people is extremely high. There's an incredibly high connection between obesity and fatality from the COVID virus. So, you know, what is going on here, Philip? Do you want to explain this to us? Like, why? You know, this is another example. Actually, you know what it is? And I'm going to say it. This is another example of journalists just being irresponsible. This is more than just... This is really irresponsible. Yep. Because saying that this image needs no commentary is wrong. And God help the girl, like whatever, right? But don't be celebrating. Don't be pretending that the story here is about white supremacy. This is a story about morbid obesity.
It's also funny. You know what it also is? It's journalists telling people that there are certain things they're not allowed to notice, to talk about.
Oh yeah, or to even...
It's about narrowing the debate on everything. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So people now look at that and they go, oh, this is also about obese people being yoga teachers. That's kind of interesting. And you read it and it doesn't mention that at all. So you think, well, we're not allowed to talk about that anymore. So it's another thing you're not allowed to talk about. And this article is actually, and they use that image deliberately, by the way.
Yeah.
to try and show you that you're not allowed to talk about
and
it.
I actually was thinking earlier as well, it's kind of weird, and I don't know if many of you have noticed this, but I've noticed this, that sometimes like when you're online and you're looking at, and there's like an advertisement. I saw an advertisement for swimsuits the other day in the Irish Times, and by the way, that's Mr. Top Cat there, who's putting on a lot of weight.
He is,
I saw an advertisement for swimsuits in the Irish Times the other day, and the first image that I opened when I clicked on it was of a black person, which, you know, is an unusual thing anyway in Ireland, by the way, by possibly less than 5% of the population are black. But actually, that wasn't the problem. The problem was that the person in the ad was morbidly obese. And it's like, what are we saying here? You know, what are we saying here? It's just kind of crazy. Okay, moving on.
Yes, we're going over to Myron Ebell.
Our dear friend Myron Ebell, by the way, worth saying.
Who works for CEI. Let's go over now and talk to him about all things energy, all things Keystone, all the important things, the things that keep the lights on. So let's go over there now. So we're joined now by Myron Ebell of the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Myron is the director for the Centre for Energy and Environment, and really an expert on all things global warming, climate change, climate hysteria, energy. And so that's and a good friend of ours.
A very good friend of ours for a really long time.
And so with all that's happening in the world at the moment, there's no better person to talk to about the madness, particularly as we look at what happened in Texas, what's going to be happening in Texas, what's happening in LA, what's happening with the Keystone Pipeline, and what's happening in the White House and what's happening at the G7. So there's a lot to talk about. So welcome to the show, Myron.
Thanks for having me, Phelim and Ann.
Good to see you. Yeah. Now, you're in the middle of a field there, Myron. Is that correct?
Well, I'm the background is Baker Valley in Eastern Oregon, and that's the Elkhorn Range, one of the bigger ranges in the Blue Mountains.
Beautiful. Is that where you're from then?
Yes.
Beautiful. But you're actually not there right now. So that's the wonders of Zoom, which we all have come to know and love. Not really during the last.
I've got I've got both feet in the swamp here.
Okay. God help us.
So so the swamp. I suppose we can't really talk about Texas. We can't really talk about Keystone Pipeline without talking about the swamp. So first of all, let's talk. I suppose the latest news actually was that Texas is warning people that there's going to be blackouts. Could possibly be blackouts because of a heat wave.
Because of heat wave.
Now Texas. It produces more energy than Saudi Arabia, but they're going to have energy blackouts.
Can you explain that to us, Myron?
They had the electricity went off. People froze to death in the winter. So please explain that to us, Myron.
Well, it's not only Texas that could be having blackouts this summer. The Southwest and California could as well. So, it's these predictions. Who knows whether they'll come true? But Texas deregulated their energy market over their electricity market over 20 years ago when George W. Bush was governor of Texas, but they also added a wind or a renewable energy mandate, which has been fulfilled by building a lot of windmills in North and West Texas. And the Texas Plains are a windy place. Mm-hmm. So you'd think they'd be fine because they're now getting something like 30% or more of their total electricity throughout the year from windmills. The problem is in the summer, it's really hot in Texas and demand goes up. Everybody turns on their air conditioning. So demand is at least twice as high as it is in the summer. But the wind doesn't blow very much in the summer. So Texas...
Twice as high as the winter, not the summer.
Yeah, in this summer because of air conditioning, right? Yeah. So demand is high in the summer, but the wind doesn't blow very much. And so they have a problem because the various companies that supply electricity into the market in Texas have spent the last 20 years concentrating on building wind factories, wind turbines, and not building conventional power plants as Texas's population has increased. So they have a problem, which is there's been too much investment in renewables, which are intermittent and unreliable, and not enough investment in conventional power plants. So, it's a gamble every summer now whether they're going to have some blackouts.
Can I ask kind of a philosophical question here, Myron? I mean, if this can happen in Texas, where I would like to think, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I would like to believe that the Texans are more educated on energy than most people in other places, because of the fact that they've had this amazing wealth, energy wealth for so long. I'd like to think that they're better than the average in terms of what energy does and how it works. How can this happen in Texas, Myron?
It's a long story of political pressure. I mean, you have to remember that the renewable energy industry is very powerful because they get a federal tax subsidy, and that gives them a lot of money to play with to influence the politics in Texas, just like they have a lot of money to do so in, let's say, California. I think Texas still has a political system that will respond to these problems. And if there are blackouts, there will be some serious consequences. I think some other states are in much worse shape going forward, particularly California, also the Northeast. California has this goal of having 100% green energy or clean energy. And that is conceivable because whenever there's a shortage in California, they can draw from, let's say, wind farms in Wyoming or solar panels in Arizona. But as more and more states adopt these renewable energy targets, there's going to be less excess power in these other states for California to draw on. So although California now has among the highest electric rates in the world, I think that the system is going to become less and less reliable, and there are going to be more and more blackouts as prices continue to rise.
I think the whole story of the blackout that happened this year, which we had friends who got stuck in a hotel with their child. Mm-hmm. They were huddled together for 3 days, no heat, no food, no water. First of all, there's a lot of interesting things here. One, by the way, the fact that the whole world isn't talking about it all the time is amazing to me, and just shows you how much power the media have to suppress an extraordinary story with very serious implications for renewable energy. But you're definitely more of an expert on this than we are. But I mean, has anything happened in Texas? Have any changes been made based on that frightening event where a 14-year-old boy froze to death in Texas in the 21st century unnecessarily?
Well, I think that the Texas blackout in February was a good example of the fact that cold is much more dangerous than heat.
Yes.
A lot more people die from cold than die from heat, even in warm places. So I think it's coming out now that there are a lot more deaths in the Texas blackout in February than were initially reported. Mm-hmm. It was a disaster. And I think that the Texas legislature, which has just concluded its session, did not adequately address the root problems. I think they did pass some legislation and they corrected some things. But by and large, the renewable energy lobby in Texas is right now, it's just too powerful to take on. So I think until there are some summer blackouts, which will be annoying, but perhaps not as deadly as the one in February when it was really cold. This was historic cold in Texas, right? It hadn't been that cold throughout the state in recorded history, really, and certainly not for over 100 years. So I think that more pain in Texas will concentrate the politicians' minds on the fact that they really do have to fix this.
I really hope you're right, Myron, but I have to say the fact that it happened in the first place at all, and the fact that people aren't all talking about it, is scary to me, because you would think that No one's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. It's not a story. It's not. If you said it, I mean, I think there's people who don't even know it happened. I think there's Americans who don't even know that this happened, that there was a blackout. And we talked to some other people. We talked to Robert Bryce, who I'm sure you know. I mean, the fact that, and we talked to John Harpole. I mean, they were basically hours, was it days? Sorry, minutes. I think, minutes. They were minutes away from a blackout over the whole of the state, which would have been absolutely catastrophic, would have involved tens of thousands of people dying. But they were minutes away from that because of the system that they have, the vulnerability of the system that they have set up there. I find the whole thing, obviously we're going through this whole COVID thing and we're looking at how the media have been really extraordinary in their dereliction of duty of telling the truth of what's going on around the world. And this is another example of the same type of thing. And it's super dangerous. Lessons are not being learned. That's my worry. No one's learning a lesson. Even the conservatives aren't talking about it. Conservative politicians aren't talking about it. Conservative politicians who owned Texas let this happen on their watch. And did those deals with those renewable energy lobbyists to allow wind to have this outsized influence, so that the grid, when it came under pressure, couldn't ramp up on time. I
agree, but I think the fact is that they've gotten over it. They somehow the tragedy and the extreme suffering is something that has been forgotten fairly quickly. I think it was reported fairly widely. I mean, it was there was a big map on the front page of the New York Times on February 17th, the front page of the Washington Post. It was on the evening news. I think Americans were aware of it, but I think that the causes are so complex that at least that there may be, I've talked about the root causes, right? The fact is that they've been investing too much in intermittent and unreliable wind power and not enough in conventional plants as the population has increased. But there were a whole lot of other things that went wrong on top of those basic causes. And so I think it's a very complicated story. And so as long as the people in charge are saying, well, we are doing something about it, we've addressed this. For example, some of the blackouts, they cut off the power to the natural gas pipelines so that the natural gas plants that produce electricity couldn't run. Well, that's an incredible goof. But you see, they weren't planning for cold weather; they're planning for hot weather problems, because Texas very seldom has weather where it's below zero, right? And it was below zero across almost the entire state for several days. So, the last time that happened, I think, was before the First World War. So, this is something that they weren't prepared for. And it's a question to me how much money they want to spend to prepare for it, for the next instance of extremely cold weather, because it may not it may happen in 2 years, but it may happen in 102 years.
I want to talk now about the other side of the other part of the country where madness reigns. The Keystone XL pipeline. Finally, the company last week said, "That's it, we're finished. We're taking it on the chin." Joe Biden has banned the Keystone XL pipeline, which is a pipeline that was going to bring Canadian oil into America for refining. And now we're going to have to find that oil from somewhere else, probably from Saudi Arabia or other great human rights regimes in the world. What's going on? And I mean, is it just going to get more and more crazy?
Probably, given what's going on here in Washington with the Biden-Harris administration and the Democrats in Congress. TransCanada, which I think became TC Energy, they're the builders of the pipeline. They built one Keystone pipeline from Alberta down through the Great Plains down to the refineries in America. And this was the second one because, of course, there's just an awful lot of oil in the oil sands up in northern Alberta, and they want to ship it the cheapest way they can. So if they can't build the second one, and this goes back, I think, 13 years now when they initially applied in the Obama administration, if you recall, kept putting them off and delaying it. a decision on the permitting, on whether there would be a permit for the pipeline to cross from the Canadian border into the U.S. So the permit is just for really a millimeter or something, or a tenth of an inch where that border is. Mm-hmm. So Trump approved the permit. And now Biden immediately, as soon as he was inaugurated, canceled it. And so the company has now faced reality and said, well, we're going to have to find some other way to get the product of the oil sands to market. There's lots of oil in the United States. I don't know that this is going to increase Saudi imports, but what's going to happen is the Canadians are going to continue to ship a lot of oil by trains.
Yes.
And trains have two problems. One is it's a much more dangerous way to ship oil.
Mm-hmm. It is,
as we've seen from several big accidents. And the second is it's a lot more expensive. So they have a problem. It's going to cost a lot more to ship this oil by train down to the Gulf refineries. And the options are difficult, but I think the option they'll eventually pursue is this big pipeline west across the Rocky Mountains to some port in British Columbia. And they'll ship the oil from a Canadian port, probably, to places like South Korea and Japan and Taiwan. So I think that, there's been a huge amount of political opposition to that pipeline in Canada, but I think that the government purchased the part of the pipeline that had been built, and they purchased the right to finish the pipeline. So the federal government in Canada owns the pipeline, and there are a number of native tribes that oppose the pipeline, and it has to go across their land. But there are other native tribes that want to own the pipeline. So I think those native tribes would like to acquire it from the government, and then they would make a lot of money from the pipeline. So it's very complicated there too, just like it is here. So, but I think eventually the oil from the oil sands will get out.
What's the Biden's administration's plan? Did they actually something like net zero by 2050 or something?
Is that their big plan?
Well, I think it's net zero. There's now three goals. There's 2030, 2035, and 2050.
Just explain to people what net zero is and what it'll mean in reality.
Well, I'm not quite sure what it will mean in reality.
Yeah.
Net zero emissions means that we will still have some greenhouse gas emissions from burning coal, oil, or natural gas, but we will somehow counteract those emissions by doing something else, so that our emissions won't be zero, but on net, when you add them all up, the counteracting will somehow balance out the remaining use of coal, oil, and natural gas. So nobody knows how that'll work. I don't think. And the goals are crazy. They seem to be designed to destroy the economy. President Biden has made it clear that he wants to change the situation now, which is, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, we still imported $500 billion a year of foreign oil, right? Mm-hmm. From Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and Nigeria and places.
All the rich places.
I mean, some years it was less and some years it was more, but let's just say $500 billion a year. So that's a huge trade imbalance that really affected our trading balance. Now, as a result of the shale oil and gas revolution, which you two know more about than I do, since you actually made a movie about it, we're a net exporter. We're the world's largest producer of oil and gas. We're the second largest producer of coal. China is the largest, but we have larger reserve. We have the world's largest reserves of coal in this country. Wow. So we've flipped that $500 billion a year imports into now we're a net exporter of energy. So this is a huge economic turnaround. So President Biden wants to throw that all away, trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth. And we now want to become a producer of renewable energy, which depends upon the production of huge amounts of metals, critical minerals, most of which are produced in other countries. and most of which are processed. That is, they take the ore and they extract the metal in China. So we will, now that we're energy independent, we're now going to become mineral dependent upon China. And this is a huge turnaround. And as far as I can tell, the goal of the Biden-Harris administration and many Democrats in Congress is essentially to destroy one of America's greatest industries and our biggest source of wealth and power in the world, and imperil our national security by making us dependent upon China.
Exactly. I mean, the day that the first shale well was fracked horizontally, it should be a national holiday in America.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it should be a day of celebration because this was the start of sending $500 billion a year, the end of sending $500 billion a year to some of the worst regimes on the planet.
Yeah.
And it means that you're less likely to have to send young men and women abroad to defend that supply and to defend. It made and leftists should love this. It made America less interventionist, probably, in the world. It made America less beholden to people who throw gay people off roofs. It made America less beholden to the corrupt kleptocrats, and it should be a matter of national and international celebration. And
if the world wasn't completely nuts.
Yes.
Which, unfortunately, it is. Yeah. No, it's frightening. It's really frightening. On that cheery note, thank you so much, Myron, for that update. We did ask you two little additional questions that we ask all our guests, which I know Myron is one of those intellectual giants, a colossus who bestrides the continents.
Yes.
And I know asking him about recipes or art. Well, art, I think possibly is okay. But we do ask all our guests if they cook anything and what did they cook, what they're famous for in their house.
What's their famous recipe?
And what's a piece of art that is important to them that they could share with the world and has inspired them. So take it away, Myron.
Well, I think there are four essential food groups: coffee, alcohol, chocolate, and hot peppers. But I grew up on a cattle ranch, and so I cook meat, and there's this whole thing about making vegetables look and taste like meat. Well, I'm working on trying to make meat look like vegetables. I think there's a huge market for that. And I think it may be larger than the reverse.
Yes.
So what I want is to make meat look like broccoli and other vegetables. So that's my big contribution to your cooking
segment. Okay, my culinary question. And what about art then? What have you? Any piece of art you would like to share with us? A movie, a poem, a book?
Well, I'm not a very talented musician, but I'm very interested in music, particularly the early Italian Baroque. But I would just mention Bach, Handel, and Scarlatti were all born in the same year, and people often think Scarlatti was kind of an afterthought. But I would encourage you to get the 34 CDs that Scott Ross recorded in the mid-1980s, initially on LPs, probably 60 or 70 LPs, of all of Scarlatti's 555 keyboard sonatas, which he recorded on several different harpsichords. It's stunning.
Oh my God. Okay. That's something I imagine they have it on Spotify, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's really good. Listen, Myron, thank you so much for taking your time today because, and I think we need to have you on again, Myron, because there's an awful lot to unpack here with this energy situation. I think it's scary. I am actually genuinely scared, because we had this personal relationship with these people who were trapped in Austin. And from a, hour by hour basis, we were trying to work out how to get these people out of a hotel and stuff. Like, it became frighteningly real. And I as you say very well, it's coming to a place near you. Yeah. It's certainly going to be coming to California because our grid is extremely vulnerable and becoming more vulnerable by the moment. As I said, when we started off today, actually, I think we just got a notification that they're asking people to start saving energy now because of the wildfire and because of the fact that there's going to be a big heat wave this week. But so this is becoming more relevant, not less. Unfortunately, Myron, that thing where, it's like Myron's life has been dedicated to trying to, sort of educate people about energy and free markets and all of that. And, we've had this conversation, you and I, before film, where it's like, 501c3s should be always hoping to become retired. That the problem that the problem that they were set up for should eventually be solved, and so that you're not got a job for life. You got a job for a few years. You'll go in there, you'll solve the problem, and you'll come out. And unfortunately, Myron, I don't see it happening for you anytime soon. Unfortunately, and it's not your fault. The fact that the governments change so dramatically.
Well, when you've got Texas having blackouts because they support renewables, I mean. This is what the left are doing. The left are getting in on Republicans, and they see that, and that's how they managed to have Boris go climate crazy.
Boris, feminine,
was to infiltrate the Conservative Party.
Well, I think the great thing though with Boris Johnson is that the grid is going to be feminine in the UK, which I bet Myron never thought of that. I bet Myron never thought of the issue of how feminine the grid was. That's Myron. That's Myron laughing, by the way.
Yes. And I like, and Phelim, I like the idea that 501c3s, a public interest group, should go out of business. Yes. And I actually thought there was a period when the climate alarmists had been defeated, and I'd actually be able to finish my career working on real issues, not on totally phony ones. But the climate industrial complex is just enormous. They have such huge resources that they can keep pushing less energy and more expensive energy down our throats.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Okay, enough for today, Myron. Thanks. We will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Myron.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Very good. And we alluded to it actually in the interview. Hunter Biden is no longer a neighbour of ours, Anne.
Why not?
Well, why not? So. There's an article about it in ArtNet, isn't that right, Anne?
Yes, there is. So ArtNet have just published an article the other day,
and then we spoke to Hunter Biden about his new life as a full-time artist, his personal quest for universal truth through painting. And the article was quite snarky, actually, for a kind of what you would expect a lefty journalist to be for an art.
My favourite part of the article is the first paragraph, which mentions my husband, Phelim McAleer. So here's what they say. Hunter Biden is on the move. The lawyer, former lobbyist, and son of US President Joe Biden has left his $5.4 million rental in Venice Beach, California, for a quieter Los Angeles neighborhood up the coast. They don't say where. He won't say where exactly because right-wing guys like to show up on his doorstep with bullhorns. I believe there was only one right-wing guy who showed up at his doorstep with a bullhorn.
Let's play that video now.
Let's play that.
Hello?
Hello?
I'm looking for Hunter.
We're looking for Mr. Biden. I'm here to ask him some questions. I'm a journalist. Who are you, sir? I work with the Secret Service. Okay. Yeah, we're not going to be taking any questions. Well, I'm not asking you questions. I want to ask Mr. Biden. Well, he's not going to take any visitors today. He's not going to come down, so... He's promoting a book at the moment. I understand that. Yeah, so I'm going to No, we're not going to hit this anymore. Okay, that's fine. We're just going to... You can stay here as long as you want, but we're not going to ask him any questions. No, I'm good. And we're not going to touch anything, okay? Okay, that's fine. I understand that. Thank you very much. All right, no problem. All the best. All right, take care. He's in.
Well, if he'd answered the door, I would have had no problem talking to him if he'd answered some questions. By the way, if journalists had done their job and asked him these questions, then I would not have had to paddle up the Grand Canal in Venice and ask him the difficult questions.
Hunter Biden, did you lie on your gun? Background check.
He's at the window.
Mr. Biden, I just saw you at the window there. Please come out and answer some questions. Did you use the Secret Service to go and retrieve your gun from a dumpster? Should that not be investigated? Should you not answer questions on this?
The article goes on then to talk about his art and that. And
Yes, so
what did you find interesting in these?
So basically, the article goes on to say the topic of our interview has nothing and everything to do with Biden's well-documented struggle with addiction, his memoir, his famous dad, his made-for-tabloid romantic life, or his ties to President Trump's impeachment and to the Ukraine. Nothing. Because he wants to talk about the art he's been making and his upcoming show in New York this fall. Everything because, well, it's art. And for Biden, everything is connected.
Well, we know everything is connected for Hunter Biden because he has been using he's been using his connections to make millions.
That's actually very good. While he has, and I'm continuing next paragraph. While he has no formal training, Biden has been making art since he was a child. In recent years, the practice has taken on a more formal, serious turn, and he now works as an artist full-time. He has a dealer, which, by the way, this article, the funny thing about this article is they keep on talking about he has a dealer, his dealer. And I'm thinking, the word dealer used to mean something quite different for him, right?
I think he's using this. I think he's using that word deliberately.
No, I think
there's a lot of snark in this article.
I feel like it's very snarky. So anyway, his dealer, 𝙎𝙤𝙘𝙃𝙬𝙧, a studio and a collector base. A solo show is on the horizon. 𝙎𝙤𝙘𝙃𝙬𝙧 plans to host a private viewing for Biden in Los Angeles this fall, followed by an exhibition in New York. Here's the lovely line here. Prices.
Actually, can I just stop you before that line? Why, I wonder, Anne, would he be planning to have a private viewing in Los Angeles this fall, following by an exhibition? Would that be just in case some right-wing guy
with a bullhorn might turn up at the exhibition?
Yes.
Anyway, I know you all want to know, so we're going to tell you. Prices for the art by Mr. Biden range from $75,000 for works on paper to $500,000 for larger scale paintings, 𝙤𝙤𝙘𝙃𝙀𝙃 says. And then the quotes from Biden are amazing. So here's a quote from Hunter Biden. "I don't paint from emotion or feeling," which I think are both very ephemeral. For me, painting is much more about kind of trying to bring forth what is, I think, the universal truth. And then the article goes on to say...
The journalist says, yeah.
The journalist says, it's tempting to brush off statements like this as a bunch of malarkey. But for Biden, a controversial figure who has been vilified by the right and uncomfortably ignored by the left, quite good, by the way, for him to say that, what is that universal truth exactly, you know?
I would say there's something to do with money. But anyway.
Here's the universal truth according to Hunter Biden. And, you know, this is what you've come to this podcast for. The universal truth. That's what we're all about here. Here he is. Here he is.
You won't get it anywhere else, folks.
You came here for the universal truth from Hunter Biden, and here it comes. The universal truth is that everything is connected and that there's something that goes far beyond what is our five senses and that connects us all.
Money.
The thing that really fascinates me is the connection between the macro and the micro.
Money.
And how these patterns repeat themselves over and over.
Money. I mean, actually, look, if those were questions, the answer to that is money. Universal truth is that everything is connected and there's something that goes far beyond what is our five senses and it connects us all. That's money, actually.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
The thing that really fascinates me is the connection between the macro and the micro, money, and how these patterns repeat themselves over and over. Money. I mean, that's what he's interested in. That's what Joe's interested in. Money and power, actually.
Oh, I don't know. Listen, you know, this is 𝙤𝙤𝙃𝙃𝙃𝙃, of course, his dealer, who represents a roster of international artists, but is not a regular at art fairs or a typical stop on the blue chip gallery circuit, said he has been a constant presence in Biden's life over the past year. The two speak by phone as many as 5 times a day. I've encouraged him to incorporate his written work in his photo-based mixed media.
Remember when he started talking about having exhibitions of his art and selling his art, and our lawyer friend said the best way to launder money is through art. So 500,000 for a piece of art, it's a great way of influencing the president of the United States without bribing the president of the United States. Actually, there's a picture, he's a self-portrait, which you actually thought was okay.
I did, actually.
And then he uses poetry as well. So the poetry, so we'll put the picture of him up. His
I think the
self-portrait.
self-portrait isn't terrible, but then I'm not an expert on art.
And then there's the poetry in it too.
And then there's a poetry in it which you find all around him, beautiful things, tangled colours, cradled mercy, made real, rose up, and he began again to write a new story. So
he's not into the rhyming and.
The poem is related to Biden's book, Beautiful Things, a memoir published in April by an imprint of Simon & Schuster. But of course, there's a deeper meaning. But by the way, Beautiful Things, a memoir, how much money did he get for that then?
2 million.
2 million.
Sold 11,000 books in the first couple of weeks.
There you go.
Oh, next, are we going to tell people about next week then?
We are going to mention this quite now. Yeah, actually, because that seems
sorry, hold on a moment. We have to tell people the most important thing about Hunter Biden.
Oh, we have to tell people the most important thing about Hunter Biden?
Yes, we're making a movie about Hunter Biden.
Oh, yes. My Son Hunter.
MySonHunter.com. You probably saw it in the video of me going up the canal, but we do need your help, and we're almost at 900,000. No, we're over 900. We need to hit $1 million. So please help us get there. Look, Hollywood, the mainstream media, they're not going to make this film. We need your help to make it. We hope to be filming in September, October. We are talking to people about starring in the movie. We're talking to some very interesting names, but we need funds in the bank. And we're doing well, but we need to do better. So please give what you can. I know we've been asking for this, and you're probably out there thinking, oh, I must do that. Please do. If you've given some, please think about giving again. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And thank you to those people who've given already. We're really in your debt, and we're really, really honoured that you're trusting us with this story. But
so please go to mysonhunter.com and let's make a movie.
Yes. But we were going to mention next week, by the way. So next week we are going to have the wonderful, ever wonderful Lionel Shriver on to talk about her new book, which is called Should We Stay or Should We Go? There's a photograph of Mr. Top Cat with the book.
Yes, so Lionel, she's a kind of a liberal person who has become kind of radicalised over the years she lives in London by Brexit, by actually the cultural appropriation argument really got her going, where you're not allowed now to write, if you're white, you're not allowed to write about black people, Hispanics, you're not allowed to write about lesbians, gays, everyone has to stay in their lane. And so Shakespeare couldn't have written most of his great work. So she really became radicalized over that and has had some very interesting views on a lot of things. And we don't agree with everything in her books, or it's a very, very interesting book about euthanasia. And the future growing old. It brings up some very, very, very interesting issues.
And it's laugh out loud funny, and it's also shocking and frightening, really frightening. It's really smart.
You've read it all.
I finished it.
I'm 70% of the way through, so we're going to have lots to say.
So you might want to read it this week in advance of our interview with Lionel Shriver.
It's called Should We Stay?
Should We Stay or Should We Go by Lionel Shriver.
SHRIVER, Lionel Shriver.
Now, Phelim, you wanted to talk about this. I feel like I watched Unpregnant. I watched this movie Unpregnant, and I spoke about it before on the podcast. But
the reason it's in the news is because it's going on HBO Max, so it's going to have a massive audience. And it's Unpregnant, an abortion road trip movie. So it's an interview in the Hollywood Reporter with the star of Unpregnant, Haley Lou Richardson, and the director Rachel Lee Goldenberg, on how they blended craziness with genuine emotion in this buddy comedy about abortion. They don't say that a lot, but it's a buddy comedy about abortion.
If a young woman needs a procedure, is that possible? Where's the closest facility? There's an Albuquerque in Missouri? The law won't let me get one without my parents knowing. Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico. We'll be in Albuquerque by tomorrow night. No. And we'll be home Sunday evening. Why are they looking at the car?
That's in my mom's boyfriend's car.
We're driving a stolen car? Hello? If you don't help us out, we're going to be in so much trouble.
I don't think that this is what you really want.
It's my life. It's my choice.
Grab on! Hold tight! Grab on me! 1, 2! Trains go fast.
So here's what happens. The Helmer and actress break down how they found a way to address the topic of teen abortion in a comedy. And can I suggest, I know one of the ways that they managed to do that was with the help of Planned Parenthood, who, as we have told you before, have someone working full-time in Hollywood getting the Planned Parenthood propaganda into movies, into scripts, into TV shows, and into.
This is why we're making the 100 Biden movie, by the way, and we'll come on to that in the interviews. The left take this very seriously. They have someone from the NRDC working full time in Hollywood to get environmental propaganda into scripts and into shows. They have someone from Planned Parenthood full time making hundreds of thousands, maybe $500,000 a year, and she gets up in the morning and all she thinks about is how I can get the Planned Parenthood messages into scripts, into
TV shows,
all of that,
all of them.
So I mean,
movies.
I mean, they talk about in the intro there. They say, found a way to address the topic of teen abortion in comedy. I'm more interested in what the article says about why they did it, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and, you know, so it's with this girl who can't get an abortion. So they go on this road trip. And, you know, Goldenberg, who's the director, Goldenberg says, I hope that people enjoy the film first and foremost. I hope that it emotionally engages them and hopefully it makes them laugh. The thing I most hope it can do is just be a small step in normalizing and destigmatizing abortion. Right?
That's how propaganda works.
That's what inspired me to make it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what she does.
What I'm hoping is to see a character like Veronica who wants an abortion and it's way too hard for her to get it, but she gets it and she's grateful that she was able to get it. Right? Because it's about somebody being in a state where minors, and it's a minor, right, who's not allowed to get an abortion without her parents' consent. So she has to drive to a state that will allow minors to get abortions without her parents' consent. So it's all about destigmatizing and normalizing abortions by minors under the age of 18 without their parents' consent. You know, and that is their plan. And that is she said that's the most important thing that she hopes people get, more than the laughs, more than the drama, more than the emotion.
Yep.
So, you know. And then she says, Richardson, the actress, says, making movies is cool because you can start conversations like this. And you can do it in a creative, entertaining, different way. That's like also My Son Hunter.
Exactly. It sounds
That's exactly why we're making the My Son Hunter movie.
Yes.
Right? Just imagine if you know, put the words My Son Hunter here. So she says, making movies is cool because you can start conversations like this. I wish I could do the Valley voice. Making movies is cool because you can start conversations like this and you can do it in a creative, entertaining, different way that makes you feel like watching a movie like this. I feel like there's something in this for everyone. And I feel like it's not just young girls should watch this and have these conversations. She talks about the Kevin character, right?
Oh,
yeah.
God.
The Kevin character in the film is not a perfect guy, but it benefited from watching a movie like this. But so she wants to start conversations because, she says, the director says, oh, maybe I can talk to her about a friend about needing to go and get an abortion or wanting an abortion.
Or maybe I can,
Yes.
What's that again?
So this is the director. So one thing that happened to me was after I graduated high school was a friend told me she'd gotten an abortion at high school and she had a hard time with it. You know, so maybe if some teenagers said, oh, I've seen I'm pregnant, maybe one of those teachers can know, oh, maybe I can talk to this friend about needing to go to get an abortion or wanting an abortion. They want to destigmatize and normalize abortion by minors. That's what that's what they do, and they want to do it in a creative, entertaining, an interesting way, and an emotional way, so that people will watch it and get this message in another way.
Can I just say, this is in some ways, this is exactly the reason why we exist.
Yes.
Everything that we do at the Unreported Story Society is exactly because of the existence of this.
Yes.
Because the left are using art, they're using exhibitions, they're using music, poetry, movies, TV shows to get their message out. We exist. We are the only 501c3 on the right, on the conservative side, who are doing exactly what the left are doing. But they are the only big difference is there's just us. On the other side, there are hundreds of millions of dollars a year being spent. Billions of dollars being spent getting the message out through the arts. And we're the only ones who are doing this. The right are very, very good at, policy papers and very intelligent political position papers and political conversation and political conferences. We're the only ones who are dedicated to the arts, to making plays, exhibitions, movies, etc., to get the message out. And our message is the truth. So please help us any way you can at unreportedstorysociety.com. unreportedstorysociety.com. Little advertisement there that I didn't expect to be doing, but actually,
if you want to help the Hunter Biden movie, let's go to mysonhunter.com. I mean, moving on now, I wanted to talk about
Venice
Beach. Let's show some photographs there. I mean, it's impossible to describe or even show in photographs
how bad it is.
The hell that is out there.
It is unbelievable. And it's not just how awful it looks, but there's also an enormous amount of violence kind of on a regular basis. I think we showed some video the last time of just how bad it is. But it is...
The crime is through the roof. Crime is through the roof. Like burglaries are up hundreds of percent. Violent acts are up hundreds of percent. And you know the spike in homicides? A lot of it in Los Angeles is violence, is homicides in homeless encampments. Yeah. People are getting shot all the time.
Starting fires.
So we have a local councilman here, Mike Bonin, right, who is now basically feeling a lot of pressure. I mean, so the sheriff of Los Angeles, who doesn't strictly have jurisdiction over the beach, has said, I'm going to go on the beach and clear these tents. But it's not just the beach, by the way. It's not just the boardwalk. It's the streets. Especially, they've set up this thing called bridge housing for people, on the beach, of course, because homeless people need bridge housing with a beautiful sea air. That's and a beautiful location.
One block from the beach.
And all that has done is encourage hundreds, maybe 1,000 people to put their tents around the bridge housing in some of the nicest parts of Venice. And and Bonin, and of course Bonin won't give press conferences. He won't do walkarounds because he'll know he'll get attacked by people here, the local councilman. So he gave an interview to a nice, friendly journalist. Bonin also acknowledged that the bridge housing facility he pushed and that I went to a meeting to and objected to, and everyone else objected to, over fierce objections from those who said it would only make matters worse, which we did. which got off to a rough start. But he contributed that to a perfect storm of legal constraints and pandemic-related hurdles. This was a problem before the pandemic. This has nothing to do with the pandemic. And he's claiming, the response to homelessness wasn't so balkanized and screwed up. Look, this is a law enforcement issue. There was always homeless in LA. There was always homelessness on Venice Beach, but there was dozens of them as opposed to thousands of them, because they were moved on, and they were told, and no one has done a survey finding out how many of them were offered homes. Most of them were, and they have refused them. Mm-hmm. So this is not a homelessness issue. This is an issue about people refusing homes and wanting to live outdoors against the law. Yeah. So therefore it's a law enforcement issue. Mm-hmm. So it's going to get worse before it gets better, maybe, but let's see.
The recipe this week is this is crazy easy, and I'm all about the crazy easy things. And I think this is something for parents, by the way. This is the kind of thing in the summer that could be great for a very quick dessert for children, and fun as well. And because it's instant. I mean, Magda and I did this together in the kitchen just now, and it was it's minutes to how long this takes. So this is using a microwave, by the way. And I always find when I watch those cookery programs, they're very sneery and snarky about microwaves.
Yes.
And actually the microwave is just the best thing ever.
That's funny. If I ever met Gordon Ramsay in a bar or in a restaurant, I'd say, is there any time, because he's always, don't use a microwave, I'm saying, is there any time when you would see a microwave as a good instrument for cooking?
Push that cat film into being well behaved. We don't want any bad behavior, particularly when I'm about to talk about food. Yeah. We can't be having the cat doing grooming, pornographic grooming. Let's put it that way. We're not having that. So this recipe this week is chocolate mug cake. God, could this be easier? And here's what you need for it. You need unsalted butter. Of course, the New York Times have this recipe and they said unsalted butter. I actually used salted butter because I use salted butter for everything, because I always use Irish butter because it's gorgeous. So I didn't need to put any, because this recipe calls for a touch of, a little pinch of salt. You don't need a pinch of salt because you've already got the salted butter. So basically a tablespoon of butter, 1 egg, a few drops of vanilla extract, granulated sugar. It's interesting. Tablespoons of this, they say 3 to 4 tablespoons of granulated sugar. I didn't do that. I did 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. And I actually think, and I think Magda, you would agree with me, and Phelim, right? I don't think it needed more sugar than that.
No, it didn't need more sweetness.
And then, if you want, you can put in a teaspoon of mini chocolate chips. But here's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be using a mug. So first of all, you want to melt that butter. Melt the butter in the microwave in 10-second slots so you don't burn or burn up, boil up the butter. See, and it'll melt really fast, and it's really cool. So melt that. Then you want to crack an egg into another bowl and add the vanilla and whisk that to combine, and then pour that mixture, the egg mixture, into the mug with over the butter and whisk that again to combine. Then add the sugar, add the cocoa powder, and salt if you need it, but you won't need it because you're going to be using Irish butter. And then whisk that until it's mostly smooth. And don't worry if there's a few lumps. Keep going. Scrape down the sides, make it as clean looking as possible. Mine isn't that clean. We were doing this in a bit of a hurry this morning. And then you don't have to, but we did, add some mini chocolate chips at the top. And then put that in the microwave for between 1 and 1.5 minutes. But keep a close eye on things. I think we would definitely recommend using a bigger mug than the one we used. And then we did the ultimate taste test, which is 𝙬𝙬, who has the very sweet tooth around here. 𝙬𝙬. What did you think?
It was delicious.
It was delicious and nutritious.
For a minute it took. I mean, it's just amazing, and it's delicious. You could serve it to a king.
Yeah, and for anyone, I'm just thinking of loads of friends of ours. For anyone who has problems with flour, including Magda, by the way, including Yvonne. You know what? There's no flour in this. And it's a cake and it's gorgeous. And what we did was we poured a bit of just pouring heavy cream on top of that, but you could whisk up that cream, or you know what would be even nicer, and I didn't have any because I realised, 𝙬𝙬, I went to the fridge earlier looking for vanilla ice cream to put on top of that, and I realised yesterday there was vanilla ice cream in the fridge, and today it's not there. And I'm thinking we were burglarised in the night. Is that correct?
So let me help you for those who can't understand Anne's English. She's actually accusing me of going to the fridge secretly.
Grand larceny. Is that what it's called?
Well, none of if it's technically mine, it's not larceny, right?
But you stole ice cream, and you know why it's stolen? It's because you never said, "Oh, I'm going to have a little bit of ice cream. Would you like a little bit yourself?"
It's always the bitter word, isn't it? It's when you're married this long. It's always the bad assumption. Never, you know.
But my wife would
never assume. My wife would never assume that she asked me to find something deep buried. I don't think it was pearl onions. Pearl onions. That were buried deep in the freezer yesterday.
Oh, and you decided to give yourself a reward for that.
See, always the bad thought again. Again, she thinks the worst. She goes straight to thinking the worst. No, Anne. I suggest that whilst I was looking for the pearl onions that you managed to stick at the very bottom of the freezer in the very worst corner, I moved stuff and put stuff on top of stuff, and that the vanilla ice cream is in the freezer, and you did not find it because you immediately thought the worst. You see, you looked in the freezer. 𝙬𝙬 has stolen it.
You're saying the vanilla ice cream is there?
And yes, and I'm going to go now. I'm going to take a picture.
No, mea culpa
doesn't swing it. Mea culpa doesn't swing it.
Maxima culpa.
Mea culpa is one of those cliches.
Okay, stop. We have got to finish this show.
Isn't it amazing how there's a time element whenever one person's in the wrong and the other's in the right? It's no, we got to go now. We got to move on.
I am in the wrong. I admit that. I'm in the wrong, and I wish I'd told you because I actually just looked in the fridge, couldn't find freezer, couldn't find the vanilla ice cream.
Didn't look.
Thought the worst.
But
by the way, maybe I thought the worst because based on history, 20 years of history of this type of activity.
It's a bit like
of saying to myself, do you know what? I know what there is in the fridge. There's that one cookie that I didn't eat, and going there and searching that fridge and not finding that cookie, and then finding somebody with literally sort of like, it's like Eric, right? You find the person then, and they've literally got like chocolate stains around their mouth.
I wouldn't waste chocolate like that. But if I had chocolate, no stains around my mouth.
That's true, actually. That's very true. Okay, the very last thing I'm going to say is that James and Sheila Tyson wrote about the one ingredient ice cream from last week, and they said
the banana ice cream.
They said add a jigger each of cruzan aged light rum and Tia Maria. We started making these in the late 90s. We love you, Sheila. Well, we love you back, Sheila. And I wrote to Sheila.
Yeah.
And I wrote to Sheila and I said, love you back, Sheila. And I love those suggestions. But by the way, just heard from Magda earlier that they made it last night. Fabulous success. However, and I think the fault is on Costco's side, not on Magda's side. Their Vitamex. Burned out. They burned out the and by the way, this is ludicrous because this is not a tough thing. It's just a banana. It's a frozen banana. So I think this is the fault. So she's going to have to bring her Vitamex back to Costco. Another good reason, by the way, to have a Costco membership because obviously they take everything back. But honestly,
except allegations about people stealing ice cream, which can never be taken back.
They'll never take that back. But one thing I can say is we're getting very good reviews about the one ingredient ice cream, and I just think it's extraordinary. It's like it's an alchemy, and isn't cooking just a joy?
So please don't
like marriage.
Just like
a joy. A thing of beauty is a joy forever.
And unlike Costco, you cannot take a marriage back. Well, you can, I suppose.
People do it all the time, particularly in this part of the world here,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
Somebody actually complimented us the other day for being married for 20 years, like it was a big thing. Where we come from, it's not a big thing.
It's called Tuesday.
It's called Tuesday, yeah. Everyone's married for 45 years where
Yes.
we're from. Okay, enough of that. See you next time. Don't forget, mysonhunter.com, whatever you can give, we really appreciate you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Bye.